In this week's parasha, Parashat Mattot Mas'eh, in the middle of the first parasha of Mattot, we have the story of the war against Midian. Now remember, in the last two parashas, we had the war with Midian and Moab, Bil'am and Balak, and how they attacked us and they tricked us in the spiritual war they did to us, and then the women that they brought against us, and Pinchas saving the day. So in this week's parasha, we go to war, and we defeat them, Baruch Hashem, we do great. A little bit of a mess up along the way, but we finish them off. And there's a whole section on koshering the utensils. And then we have psukim and psukim after psukim about the spoils of the war and how the spoils were split up and how they were counted. And they're like a lot of verses, like more verses discussing how the spoils, how the rechush, how the shalal was, the malkoach, was shared with the people, as opposed to the actual wars of the war itself. So why so many pesukim discussing the details of how it was shared? So I heard a great shiur from Rabbi Ziering who goes through a couple of opinions of the Rishonim and Achronim who try to paint a clear picture. What's Hashem trying to tell us? Okay, so first off, the details of how they split the shalal, they split the spoils. So first off, there were 12,000 soldiers that went to war. And now they have all the spoils of war. So it says the pasuk, the spoils were split. Half goes to the people who fought in the war, and the other half goes to the rest of the Jewish people. Now comes along the Sforno, and the Sforno asks, okay, so why is everybody getting? Maybe only the soldiers should get. Why is it being shared with everybody? So the Sforno wants us to know this was a national war. This was a war of revenge for the spiritual attack that Midian did to us. And don't think it was like a war for the sake of war. Don't think it was soldiers who were trying to get ahead. This was a national war to protect our spiritual interests, to take revenge against Midian for what they did to us. And therefore, Hashem has part of the laws that everybody gets a portion. Everybody gets part of it. And that way it's clear that it's a national war. Okay, great. That's part one. That's the Sforno. We keep going, and so everybody gets their spoils, and then the soldiers have to donate 1/500th of their spoils to the Kohanim, while the rest of the Jewish people have to donate 1/50th to the Levi'im. So the Abarbanel notes, he says, interesting. The soldiers, they got a lot more than everybody else. I mean, if you take 12,000 soldiers, they get half of all the spoils, and all the rest of the Jewish people get the other half. So they get a lot more. But now when they donate the stuff, they donate much less. So the soldiers only donate 1/500th, and it goes to the Kohen, while the rest of the Jewish people donate 1/50th, which is much more, to the Levi'im. So first off, he asks, okay, so why the Levi'im and the Kohanim? What's the difference? So he says the Levi'im, that probably was a thank you, the Jewish people giving a thank you to the Mishkan and the protection that they got from the Mishkan. But the soldiers themselves, they are giving to the Kohen, and the Kohen is representing Hashem. It's representing Hashem who protected them and saved them, and they made it through the war alive. The Ramban actually takes it a step further, and the Ramban is saying that it's actually thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because we're recognizing this is not just, we mentioned that it's a national war, but it's really also a spiritual war. It's a war for Hashem. Hashem wants us attacking Midian. Hashem wants us getting this revenge for the spiritual attack they did to us. So it's a godly war, and part of the 1/500th is a thank you to Hashem. Actually, the Abarbanel does some math, and he says the Levi'im also have to give it, once they get the 1/50th, they have to donate 1/10 to the Kohen. So ultimately 1/500th of everybody's stuff is going to God. And that's a statement saying, Hashem, we recognize it's a war for you, it's what you wanted, and we want to thank you for getting us through here. So the Sforno broadens the war to make us understand that it's a national war, and now Abarbanel and the Ramban are explaining that it's also a godly war, and ultimately we're thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all that we do. But if you put all that together, so we go back to the question, so then why did the soldiers get so much? So it's if it's a national war, it's a godly war, so you might think everybody should get the exact same amount. So comes along the Chizkuni and he explains, no. Do you know why the soldiers get so much? Because ultimately they put their life on the line. They risk themselves. So therefore, they deserve a much larger portion. They deserve at least half the spoils. God says they deserve half the spoils because they ultimately put their life at risk. They put their life on the line, and that's worthy of getting a larger portion as well. So you see in the way these psukim talk about how the spoils are split, we can see, oh, there's a national war here. Oh, we have to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for protecting us, and we're doing it for God. But ultimately, also, don't discount what the Mesirut Nefesh, literally the risking of the life of the soldiers, and they get their special portion for that as well. So some cool ideas from the stats and the way the spoils were split. Shabbat shalom.